via Facebook streaming, YouTube streaming, and via Skype. Each one of you is welcome to this live streaming from wherever you are connecting. You are welcomed. Sutras of Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, living in reality. That is the chapter where two sutras are there. First was just as a hen mothers her chicks, mother your knowing and doing. This is second sutra. This is very important. In truth, both bondage and liberation are related. Bondage and liberation are words only for those who are terrified, who are afraid of the universe. And really, universe is reflection of the minds. Just as you see the reflection of many suns and many moons from one moon, you see bondage and liberation. This technique is very important. Albert Einstein is reported to have said, if you have really understood complicated things, really understood, you can explain in a very simple terms. This technique has been, entire Zen path is based on this technique. In a way, Sufi path is also based on this technique. But both Sufi path and Zen are like Windows and Apple systems. Both systems have certain similarities, but their operating principle is different. Windows has words, Apple has pages, so on, and the difference is there. So both Zen and Sufism are like two different operating systems. But there are many similarities. Sufis do not tell you to leave the world and follow the path of liberation. Zen do not. Although this is a common goal, but their methodology is different. Terminologies are different. From the example of Apple, MacBook, and Windows operating system, you can see the difference. It is a very deep technique, one of the deepest, and only rare minds have tried it. Zen is based on this technique completely. This technique is saying a very difficult thing, something very difficult to comprehend, not difficult to experience. When you are trying to understand mentally, you will not be able to understand it. But you can experience it. But first, comprehension is needed. Only then experience will come. Like Hindus talk about 4 ways of life. They are known as inherent qualities of life: earth, economics and finance, dharma, righteousness, and calm, pleasure. The 4th is moksha. So, earth, finance, economics, righteousness, and pleasure. These are the techniques how to live in the world, how to live in the world on a day-to-day basis when you are dealing with the patients, dealing with the person's righteousness, the all these things are important. But when you have lived life according to a righteous life, understanding the implications of pleasure and the righteousness, economics, then as a realization, liberation happens. Liberation is not the inherent quality of life, it is the goal. It is a realization. When there is a cooking technique, when you follow the cooking technique systematically, then as a result, what you get, you can call that state, whatever item you are using to make the dish gets liberated. So, Sutra says that the world and nirvana or liberation are not two things. Just as coin has head and tail, life and death, so they are not separate from one another. For this, something, the word in Sanskrit is used jigyasa. Inquisitiveness, curiosity is very important. It is the beginning, but in Christianity, it is considered as sin. It is said God has prohibited Adam and Eve to eat the fruits from the tree that grew in the middle of the garden. Adam and Eve became inquisitive. Curiosity arose in them. This is in Sanskrit word known as jigyasa. And with that jigyasa, they ate that fruit. And it is said, in Christianity, God expelled them from the Garden of Eden. But Sufis say this is a device, a technique of God. Otherwise, they will remain uncultured. But in Hinduism, jigyasa is very important. It is said a 5-year-old boy sees the rising sun and thinks it is an apple. So he goes and grabs the sun and puts in his mouth. The entire cosmos was in dark. This is a misbehavior, disobedience, mischief as you can call it, which this child was not supposed to do. He flew, reached to the sun, seeing the sun as red rising sun, he put it in his mouth, and then it is said the Lord Creator came, He blessed him, He rewarded him for many things, for his inquisitiveness, for this mischief. And that child was Hanuman. Another, it comes in the Upanishad, Kathopanishad. In Kathopanishad, there is a sage, his name is Ashwalena. He is performing a yajna. When you are doing any prayer, so you make the gifts to be given to the priest, to the elderly people, and those who are rich, they will like to give the gifts to the children, to the others, to all the other elders, depending on their capacity. So it happened that there many people are invited. Many people were invited. So for each a gift was to be given. So Ashwalena is working on that. So as a little child, Nachiketa is asking the father, Father, who you are going to give this cow? Who you are going to give this gift? In Hinduism, when a prayer is performed, there is a bag is made, which is an offering given to the priest. Like say there is a prayer session is taking place, a priest is narrating the story, the continue, but he is assisted by many people, the musicians, the technicians, so that gift bag which carries the food items and a piece of cloth, or depending on individual capacity, and some money in it. So Nachiketa is asking, Father, whom are you going to give this gift? Because he was helping the father in preparing the gifts to be given. So everything. So then what he was doing, giving the cows which were not, had gotten old, and they were not capable of giving the milk. Instead of giving, that is what we do when we want to give the charities. We try to look for the things which we do not have in use. Or if you want to give a donation to a church, to a temple or anything, you come to the shop. Many times people come to our shop and they say, I need this gift to be given. I need a special price. You want to give to the gift, wait for the shop owner to decide on his own. So then he asked, Father, whom are you going to give me to? So with his question, the father got angry, got kind of irritated, as just happened. You are working and your children are asking, Daddy, what are you doing this? What are you doing this for? What is this for? What is that for? Naturally, a kind of, because the child is disturbing, you are trying to focus on something. So out of disgust, Ashwalena said, I am going to give you to God of death. I am going to give you to God of death. So Ashwalena, the Nachiketa is very happy. He goes to the door of God of death. And in body, nobody can reach. In physical form, nobody can attain to death. He reached there. God of death tried to convince him many times, many things. He did not get convinced. So he explained to him the entire science of life and death. That is what the entire scripture, Kathopanishad, is. The teachings about life and death given by God of death to Nachiketa. A similar story was based on which Sri Aurobindo wrote his epic poem Savitri. Savitri is the woman. She was out of curse. She was born out of blind parents. They were living in exile in the forest. But she was very bright. And the person whom she got married to was also the son of a king. But they lost their property. His name was Satyavan. And they were also in exile. So when Savitri became of marriageable age, she went on a stroll in search of her mate as a husband. There she meets Satyavan and cutting the wood. So she decided to choose him. When this message reached to the wandering news reporter, just as Khizr alayhi salam is wandering news reporter according to Islamic tradition, Narad is international cosmic news reporter in Hinduism. So he said, that is good, he is very courageous, very this and that and so, but his life is very short. He has only 1 year to live. So the parents and everybody tried to dissuade Savitri not to marry him, instead choose another partner. So she said, once I have chosen something, that is determined. So as the day of, so Aurobindo writes, it is a joy reading that poem. A joy reading that. It has a rhythm, it has a flow. And in that flow you understand it. In that flow you understand it. It was the hour before God's awake. In the somber symbols of her eyeless muse. Then I am just narrating a few passages here and there. On the dumb bosom of this oblivious globe, although as unknown beings we seem to meet, we are not aliens nor as strangers join. We are bound to each other by a causeless force. Love is mocked, disfigured by the baser might. Like this it goes on. So the destined day when Satyavan was to die, she went with him in the forest, and it was noontime. He lay down to rest with his head on the lap of Savitri, and the time of death came. The god of death sent his messengers, or god of death came to take him. So when he was going, taking him, Savitri followed him. So when god of death saw Savitri following, he turned and he said, no mortal being in his physical form can come with me. He said, you are taking my husband, take me also. So he said, your destined time has not come, but so he said, ask for a boon. So she asked for a boon for the prosperity, that my parents recover their eyes. Be it so, said the god of death, and he moved forward. Savitri continued to follow him. Savitri continued to follow him. Then after some time he looked back and he saw that she was following. So again conversation began between the two. Then he said, you can ask for another boon. Right? She asks for the restoration of the kingdom and prosperity of her in-laws. God of death said, be it so. And he moved forward. Savitri continued. Look at the intelligence of that woman. Look at the intelligence of that woman. And remember, those who are doctors, they will know every man was a woman once upon a time. When the fetus is growing, the two hormones, when they start activating, clitoris is penis. When it develops because of certain, then it becomes, then only the X and Y chromosomes and their number determines. For 6 months, for the 6 to 14 weeks, I think 6 months or something like that, the gender is not defined. It is these hormones get activated at the 14th week of the pregnancy, when they determine whether it will remain as a clitoris or penis. So the gender is determined. So once upon a time, each one of us was a female. And this we need to understand. So Savitri continued following that. So women are most intelligent people, but men have always put them down. Islamic tradition says that in heaven there will be the women 72 hurs who never age. There will be rivers of wine for men. What about the women? Islam does not talk anything. If it does, let me know. That women who die, when they reach heaven, will they be given 72 males? But it does not talk about. So these are male oriented. Savitri continued. Then God of death again looked back and he said, coming, he said, I have given you womb. So she said, but you are carrying my husband. So she asked for another womb. So she said, may I be the mother of 100 children. May I be the mother of 100 children. God of death said, be it so. So first boon she got, look at intelligence. First boon she got the eyes and prosperity, restoration of their kingdom for her parents. Second, restoration of the kingdom of her in-laws. And third, the boon for herself. She did not ask the first boon for herself. Then the boon for 100 children, but she continued following. God of death said, I have given you the boon, but why are you following me? She said, you had given me the boon of 100 children. And how can I have my 100 children when you are carrying my husband with you? God of death got stuck with the intelligence of Savitri, and he had no choice, because he had given the boon that you be the mother of 100 children. So he did not say go and have it with someone else. No, the righteousness. And then God of death released her husband Satyavan, and that's how he was able to, out of her own austerity, her intelligence, she was able to bring back her husband into life. So there is difficulty. This technique is very difficult to comprehend, not to experience. At that time, she could have been disturbed, but she continued to use her intelligence, and she got everything for her parents, for her in-laws, for herself, and saved the life of her husband. Sutra says that the world and nirvana, liberation, are not two things. They are like two sides of the same coin. If I put it here, imagine a coin to be a cylinder with open ends. One end, or a tunnel. Cylinder will be easier, or the pipes that are used for running the water or cable under the ground along the roads. It has two ends. because the water has to flow, and one pipe will not be enough. Even you look at the plumbing system, there are pipes of a certain length and they are connected to one another if a certain length is needed. And at the terminals, we use the tap, we use the joiners, elbows, all these things if we have to change the direction of that. So in the same way, if we consider it a hollow pipe or a tunnel, it has two sides. One side is head, the other side is tail. Whichever side you are entering, you may enter from the head side, but there is only one-way track, one-way traffic, not the two-way. So you are coming from the other side. So this systematic, you see there are certain countries that they have the character of the nation. Character of the nation means in United States, we drive on the right side, the right hand drive, so we drive on the right hand side of the road. It is by the law you are supposed to drive. When I visited Japan, there were elevators in malls, railway stations, and all those places. We noticed all the people are standing on the right side of the elevator. The left side of the elevator is left empty. These minor simple things draw my attention why it is so. Why it is so. So when I inquired, he said there is the person who I inquired from, he said there is no law in the country that we have to stand on the right side of the elevator. But this is the character of the nation that everybody who is going up the escalator will stand on the right side of the elevator. Another thing is this: when a train is stopping, everyone is forming a queue outside on the platform and will wait for the passengers to disembark before the people who are standing on the platform to embark the train or subway or anything. This is the character. So the two things, liberation and bondage, are not separate. They are two sides of the same coin. If you understand, you are running away from bondage, or you are running away from the work or life or anything, then liberation will be difficult. What are you trying to liberate yourself from? Liberation is not escaping. You have a family, you have to live in the world, you have to get a job, you have to maintain a family, you have to work in order to go beyond the body and mind. Sufis and all these people emphasize on understanding, experience the male-female relation. This was another story I'm going to relate it to you. It happened that Shankaracharya, not the Shiva, Shankar, who was born in 3rd century AD, 3rd century I guess, in this southern tip of India, Kerala. The city was called Kaladi. He was born there. At the age of 9, he took this sannyas, renunciation, renounced the life, and He was the one who composed the Atma Shatkam, composition of 6 stanzas of 4 lines each. Mano buddhi hankar chittani naham. I am neither the mind nor the ego sense. And then he continues, say, I have no father, no mother. And if you say that I have no father, no mother, so people will say something is wrong with you. But really, who is your father? And that is very well explained between the triangle of Jesus, the Mary, Joseph, and Holy Ghost. Holy Ghost was the spirit that dominated the consciousness of Joseph at the time of conception. And so Mary was totally not involved in the physical realm, but she was meditative at that time. Joseph, although physically he was involved, both of them were involved, at that moment Mary was meditative. Joseph was possessed by the Holy Ghost. So out of that conjugal relation, a Jesus could born. Jesus could not be born out of an ordinary womb. When we talk about the womb out of which Buddha was born or Hazrat Ubaidullah was born, they are the unique wombs when the parents are not involved in the physical act. Instead, they are meditative at that time. The act is happening at the physical level, but their consciousness is transcended beyond the body and body-mind realm. So that time, Jesus could be born. So you are doing the work. You can do the work as an involved person. Involved. I'll tell you. Yesterday I visited, for some reason, a doctor. And we needed some papers for immigration for someone. So he said he cannot change the date because it is a legal document. And to write the letter, he was asking for a fees. And then so he said the patient was not in a position to visit the doctor, so he has to visit home, not realizing the state of the patient, said that he will visit home. His fee is $1,000 and he will charge to give the letter for immigration. For that he will not charge. This is one approach. The other approach is when a customer comes to my place, the customer said, this item, I do not know if I will like it or not. My way of operating is, yes, if you do not like and you open it and you do not like it, you bring it back to us, we will give you the refund. He said, suppose I do not have the bill then. I said, doesn't matter, but I recognize my item. This item, and I recognize that you had bought. Even if I do not recognize you, it is my product. Whether you buy it at my place or the place where I have given it to, it is my responsibility to honor that. So you can bring it. Once it happened that somebody had bought a flower from another store where we have been supplying, and he called me that the flower I bought, it has some problem with it. So I said, did you go there to the shop? He said, we went there. They said that I have to present the bill, and their logo is "We care." Who you care for, yourself or the customer? So I said, which part you bought this item? He said he bought this store. So I said, what brand? So I said, yes, that is my brand. You bring it back. He said, but I do not have the bill. I said, I did not ask you for that. You mentioned this is my product. Then he said, one bag, when it was opened, my wife saw the problem, she threw it away. I said, you said 2 bags you bought. You will come and get the 2 bags from me without any problem. So when he came, so I asked, did you have the bag? He said, no, when I talked to you, I saw it, but my wife threw it away. I said, okay. If you are lying, it is your responsibility, your righteousness, your way of life. I have promised you, you told me that this is the flower that you bought from that, and I will exchange it for you. These are the 2 approaches. That approach of the doctor will keep him bondage into the world. This approach that I have mentioned shows that non-attachment with the world. Non-attachment with the world. You can be in the world, but you cannot let the world be into it. I am in the business, but business is not in me. The doctor is in business, but the business is into him. Business is part of the whole consciousness. Realizing that the patient cannot visit the doctor, he could say that he can give a discount or anything. No. That is okay. That is the way you live your life. So you are seeing the world as a bondage, or you can say that, like sitting down in a taxi, little uncomfortable position, maybe a bondage, you may complain, or you can understand that this is the way to liberate, that you are going to the place where you need to go. Is a totally different approach. The masters have lived, the Sufi masters, the Zen. Somebody asked a Zen master, Linchi, what you do after enlightenment? He said, I go to the forest, cut the wood, pull the water from the well. And before enlightenment, what you used to do? I used to go to the forest, cut the wood, pull the water from the well. What's the difference then? Difference is, one, if you have experienced it, only then you will know it. This is difficult to comprehend. How my approach is, this only you can experience, realize when you are living a non-attached life. Yes, money is an important source, is a measuring rod, important source. You can live in the world completely attached to it, or non-attached. So then you can only then, you cannot comprehend these 2 words. Comprehend through an example, you can understand the opposites. First, comprehension is necessary. Then through experience, you attain to liberation. We say world is bondage. So how to get out of this world and be liberated? So you renounce. So I was giving you the example of Shankar. So Shankar got enlightened, and he was moving throughout the length and breadth of the country, and wherever you go, he will enter into discussion with someone. So he reached a place where that name of the person was Mandan. Mandan Mishra was his name. He was a very learned person. Shankar entered into an argument, a, a dialogue with him. You ask one question, I will answer. I will ask a question, you will answer, like that kind. So it happened. Finally, Mandan was defeated. When Mandan was defeated, he was to accept the dominance of Shankar. Same time his wife came, Mandan's wife came. He said, husband and wife are the two sides of the same coin. You have defeated my husband, but he is not completely defeated, he is only half defeated. He will be fully defeated if you can defeat me also in argument, in dialogue. So Shankar entered into dialogue or the argument with his wife. She asked questions. Then she asked the questions relating to sex. Shankar was recluse, a sannyasi who has renounced life, he has no experience. So he said, give me 6 months' time, I have to go and experience this and then come and answer your questions. The question was related to how one can be in the act of sex and be non-attached. Shankar had no experience. So his 12 disciples, Shankar and sat down in the middle, all the apostles formed a circle. They were on the circumference, and Shankar, they renounced the body, like the body was there, that we know. I will explain. This is astral travel. You are here and you are seen somewhere else also. But here your only body is, but consciousness is elsewhere. So Shankar realized through his meditation that a king was dying. So he said, this is a good opportunity. So he entered, his consciousness entered into the life of that king who was dying. And he lived 6 months, experienced the married life. His consciousness, his body did not experience. This is the difference between Joseph being the consciousness of the Holy Ghost, being the consciousness of Joseph at the time of the conception was taking place. And Mary, on her own, because of her austerity, was meditative. So Shankar experienced that. After 6 months, he came back to his body, but during that time, the disciples continued to remain in the meditation constantly so that the warmth of the body is maintained. Because when a soul leaves the body remains warm for a certain period of time. The body does not die immediately. It can be resuscitated within a certain period of time if a proper medical facility is provided. So there are different breaths and how they release and how long it takes and that and this. That is why Muslims perform a 40-day ceremony. Hindus perform accordingly. So Shankar's spirit, the consciousness, entered the body of the, or you can say soul, entered the body of the dying king, lived there. His consciousness experienced, at the level of consciousness, he experienced the sex. You experience, you involve in sex at the level of the body and mind, not at the level of consciousness. When you experience sex at the level of consciousness and you are involved at that level, only then you can be light beyond sex. You are light beyond sex. So your body is involved, but you are not in that state. And then when he came back, and the body was maintained, the warmth of the body was maintained. His consciousness entered into the body became alive. As it happens, sometimes somebody is got a heart attack. If immediately resuscitation process is provided, the body can be recuperated, can be restored. But if it is delayed or the warmth of the body is lost, the man cannot be alive afterwards. Then Shankar defeated his wife, I do not recall the name, and then the two of them became his disciple, and Shankar gave them the instructions what to do. So being in the body, being in the world, you can be as a renunciate. You do not need to leave the world. You do not need to leave the family life. You do not need to leave the relationship between husband and wife. Only the approach when changes. You experience something which is beyond body and mind. That is the purpose for which you have to enter into the male-female relation. Then liberation is something, if for you the world, the family life, the wife, children, they are bondage, then liberation will be something opposite, which is not bondage. But this sutra says that both are same. Head and tail are same. The moment you understand head and tail are part of one coin, in order to gain something or obtain something from this coin, you have to give away both head and tail. This is the going beyond the duality. Beyond it, life is dualistic, mind is duality. Going beyond the mind or attaining to the state of no mind is going beyond the duality. Yes or no. If you want to get something, a soft drink, if you are divided into yes, no, yes, this, no, this, yes, that, no, that. So you will never be decisive. It is beyond the duality you can be decisive. Beyond the duality alone you are decisive. And that is what, when you are decisive, that is a state of liberation. But the sutra says both are the same, liberation and bondage. And unless you are freed from bondage and liberation both, you are not really attained to freedom, really attained to enlightenment. Enlightenment is going beyond the bondage, beyond bondage and liberation. Bondage binds and liberation also binds. Bondage is slavery, liberation is also slavery, because then you become critical of all that is worldly. Then you will be critical of sex is not good, you should not engage in sex. If you want to attain, you have to go beyond this, and all this. The head is bondage, tail is bondage. The freedom is beyond head and tail. When you give, only then you get something which is beyond the duality. The juice or the soft drink or the item that you are getting is the enlightenment, is the freedom beyond head and tail, beyond the duality of head and tail. That's why no mind is, there is nothing like no mind. No mind is that, is a state of, this word used to explain the state when you are not leaning to this side or that side. Not this side, that side. You are totally in the middle. To understand this, look at a person who is trying to go beyond bondage. What is he doing? He leaves his home. He leaves his family. He leaves his riches. He leaves the things of the world. He leaves the society. Buddha left the society. Buddha left the life to lead the life of a renunciate. He left the palatial, the comforts, and then became a recluse. So he left the world to realize the other state, and then he came back into the life. So when you are living like a bondage as a family, as a family comprising of husband, wife and children, then you are living in bondage. When an understanding dawns, you live in the same family with the same husband, same children, but you are living in a totally detached manner. You have experienced something which is beyond the bickerings that used to happen earlier on. The relationship was between you and your husband, you and your spouse, you and your children, you and your parents. The nature has changed. What happened? They come out of the fetters of liberation and bondage both. Neither bondage bothers you, nor liberation gives you freedom or joy. Nothing. Both are good. Both are good. Jesus, because the moment you realize that children are my children, you have to realize that you have been given the responsibility of taking care of these children. You are my responsibility to, as much as possible within my means, what is my level of understanding, realization and experience to share with you. And the moment you grow up in that, we are separate. The moment the egg is hatched, the moment egg is hatched, it is hatched by the mother hen. The moment it is hatched, it is ready to come out. The chicks break open the shell and come out of the shell. For some time they remain attached to the mother. Then they start becoming on their own, and the birds that make the nest, they give eggs in the nest, they hatch the eggs, and then one day it is the mother bird that pushes the young bird out of the nestle, and the young bird start flapping its wings and learns how to fly, how to flap its wings to fly. So the master nourishes and nurtures you, hatches you, then pushes you out of the nestle so that you can start learning on your own to flap your wings and live your life. This is the purpose of the master-disciple relationship, master-disciple communion or communique or whatsoever you may call it. If you do not, so you realize what Khalil Gibran in Prophet speaks through the Prophet Al-Mustafa. Al-Mitra asks, Master, what about love and children? He says, let there be distance in love. I'll speak another time what is meant by distance in love. And children are born through you, not from you. You are the passage through which children are born. Did you know that this child will be born out of you? No, you did not. So consider children after some stage as your friend. In the beginning, it's a different thing. When I am suckling, the master suckles the disciples, it's a different state. As the disciple grows into awareness, one day the disciple becomes the friend of the master. Both master and disciple becomes friend. Then one day the disciple has to go on his own. His journey has to continue. This is the way of life. Zen has done it in a different way. And that day then happens, at times it is said, the disciple slapped the master that you had been fooling me all the time. The seed is the flower and flower is the seed. Both are the same. But to you, seed is seed and flower is flower. Both master and disciple on the same journey. One has blossomed, the other is in the process of being blossomed. So both have the same destiny. If the seed one seed continues the journey and becomes a flower, the next seed remains packed in the shelf and is never planted, never sowed. So that seed's journey has not begun. You are lucky enough that your journey has begun. And once a proper nourishment is provided, then you will attain to flowering. That is the greatest joy for any master, any awakened one, to see one of his disciples getting blossomed into a flower. That blossoming of the flower of the being is enlightenment. That blossoming of the seed of the being is awakening or enlightenment. Only this much for this morning. Until we meet again, and I'll speak, then we continue on that. Complicated things, once you understand them, you can explain them in simple words. That is an important statement of Albert Einstein. He was a scientist, but he was a scientist with a spiritual mind. That is the beauty of Albert. Whatever his personal life is, it does not matter. But the personal life finished with him. What was the personal life of Hermann Hesse? How miserable life was. But what he produced, what the humanity will know, nobody will know Hermann Hesse unless you go into the life history of Hermann Hesse. But what he wrote, the play Siddharth, for which he was given the Nobel Prize, is important. He uses the terms certain things. The way he explains the story of Buddha, totally a different kind of a narration is there than the actual story of life of Buddha. A different kind of a narration, a dramatic expression of that is the beauty. Albert Einstein was beautiful in his own way. So until we meet again, take care and do have a pleasant day.